Okay, so this is probably the 15th attempt at this, but we're going to get it going anyway. So I figured, hey, what wouldn't be a fun project on a Sunday afternoon with the Browns getting their asses handed to them by the Kansas City Chiefs, as we all expected. And the premise of this initial post is to really kind of discuss kind of a conversation I had a couple weeks ago with a good friend regarding life and death and the finite portion of what our lives are. What's interesting is that, death is a certain one of the few in this world that we all are going to face in some way or another, yet most of us don't want to talk about it, think about our own mortality and those kinds of things. And what really drew me to kind of put this out there was I had a very interesting upbringing, having grown up around a funeral home in the funeral industry. My dad was a funeral director and embalmer. I walked those halls, and I actually followed in his footsteps after his untimely death at the age of 17 for me, and kind of really got a deeper appreciation for what that life works and looks like. And then went on to another career in a whole different field, and then eventually on to nursing, as inspired by another family member's, end of life care. And, being in my early 30s at the time, I was like, hey, yeah, fuck yeah, man, I want to be a nurse in the ER, or it's whatever. And come to find out that I actually like the ICU a lot better. There's nurses out there that can attest to you're kind of one or the other, and it's just a kind of mindset. And after I had graduated, after working briefly in the ICU as a new grad, you feel like you're going to kill somebody every day, not intentionally, of course. Um, and our hospital was being acquired by one of the big players in town. I decided, you know what, this really isn't the fit for me, and took an opportunity in hospice as a case manager in the field, working with patients that were, at the end of stage of life and that kind of thing, and really learned in depth about what that benefit truly is and what it provides. And what I found over my almost 11 years in hospice and over 11 and a half as a nurse is that one, I'm definitely a community nurse, and two, I really appreciate end of life care when done properly. And I think a big focus of this discussion is really about just that, and having that difficult conversation that most people just don't want to have, or the capacity to have is very difficult to achieve, and understanding that. Um, I think for me personally, I was influenced by the sudden death of my father, and there wasn't an opportunity to prepare for it. It just happened, juxtaposed to his brother's passing some 20 plus years later. And he did go through a disease process that led to end of life, and what the hospice benefit was identified to be, and what was put in place for it, because they find out that, you put that family member for a hospitalization, 911, testing, medications, and unfortunately, there's not going to be a positive outcome from that. In fact, there's probably more of a negative outcome on that individual more than anything. Every little trip and hospitalization and test and that takes more out of the individual, and really kind of steals that end of life quality of care. I think when most people hear about the word hospice, they think of cancer patients, and they think of a little place where it's all warm and fuzzy and flowers and quiet and peaceful and serene and those types of things. But the truth is, it's meant to be wherever that person calls home. And what makes me so compelled to kind of speak to this topic in particular is the fact that I think there's just a lack of education in general, lack of awareness, just because, again, going back to, we just don't want to see our own mortality. And that's okay. But the fact is, we all eventually have to face it and address it, right? So my hope is that, you know, if one person sees this and kind of takes away that nugget, that would be great. Um, the approach to how you do that is so individual and so unique. And I'll go back to my early days, from my discussion with Matt of, It's like, how did you have those conversations, or your perspective on this and that? And to be honest, it's pretty interesting. I think a lot of things come down to communication in this world, and as a society, I feel like we've really lost the ability to communicate honestly, openly, and the ability to agree to disagree on a topic, whatever that topic is. So, um, when I would go in to meet a family, I get a call from the office to go to this location. So and so is ready to discuss, what's going on. And I'd walk in the room and just put all my papers down, try to be there before them, and greet them as they came in, and just say, "Hey, tell me about you. What's going on? Who are you? Why are we here? Explain to me a little bit about your loved one, so I can get a sense of where they were at, because it's not a difficult, I'm sorry, it is a very difficult thing to have just the ability to have that conversation, let alone enact the benefit. So, uh, what I found is by just sitting there and just really kind of getting to know the individual, I was able to understand what their pain points are. And that being so important, because I could go in as a clinical person and I could just list off all the technical things of, oh, you qualify for XYZ, this is what's going to happen. But that's so cold and sterile, which is unfortunately a lot of um, our medical world at the time. When you think about it, physicians are hardly trained, if at all, very little end of life care. And which is unfortunate, because you think there'd be more emphasis put on it because of the importance of it and the fact that it is gonna occur. And as a nurse initially, especially out of school, you're taught to, okay, how do we improve? We're always care planning to a positive outcome to get the person back to a place of where they were, or close, if not possible, to get back to that place. And when you think of it from a hospice perspective, you're looking at it from the totally different perspective of, all right, now we're trying to a place of decline. And what signs and symptoms are they showing that indicate their end is coming to uh, near, right? And it's not an overnight thing, although sometimes it can be, and sometimes it's a long played out process. Sometimes patients come on and they're rallied by the support that they get from those individuals providing that hospice care, which is not only the nurse but the aide, the spiritual chaplain that's, to be non-denominational, the social worker that's involved, all of the components that are there to help both the resident or patient get to a place of comfort and acceptance and to be comfortable, in addition to the um, family members too. Because what I've seen over a number of years is, most of the time you'll see family members that are looking for cues, looking for guidance, because they have that trust in a physician. They've gone through all that schooling. And again, those physicians, when you think about it from their perspective, are, taking care of a number of patients in that hospital setting, or um, just aren't comfortable having that conversation. They're taught to save lives, and there's a certain dignity that can be achieved when the benefit's done right, and it's not meant to be for days or hours. It was established to be a 6-month benefit with the ability to continue while those symptoms and signs of decline are showing, because there is no crystal ball. I can say you have this disease process, but that doesn't mean your timeline's going to align with this person over here. Rather, it's a situation where everybody's unique and individual. But then, as that time does approach, there are signs and symptoms that present that that individual is ready to move on to the next phase of whatever you believe in, whether it's a faith bound thing, whether it's just a spiritual nature, energy, whatever you want to call it. That's for everybody to kind of decide for themselves. But it is very true, having seen and held the hands of a number of people that have passed in real time, that that presence, that thing that was them, does leave, and it goes on to another place, wherever that is. And that's a debate for a totally other day. My focus here is just kind of getting them to that comfortability and realizing it. And I always go back to why I did what I do, or why I do what I do, and still working in hospice to this day. And I've been fortunate in my career to have worked in a number of capacities and even probably traveled over 15 plus states in various roles, helping agencies at the time in different ways and so on and so forth. But I always go back to one of my first patients that I took care of in the field, and I had to be at her home every Monday morning at 9:30. And I was sitting at the kitchen table, and she had a steno notebook telling me, "I'm not dying. I need these supplies. I need these medications, and I'm not signing your stupid DNR." And a number of months into that role, I got pulled into a clinical leadership position, and another nurse I went to school with took over her care, and I would be able to keep tabs on her. And sometime down the line, I would go and visit her every now and again, and she says, "You know what? I'm ready to sign the DNR because I know going to the hospital and then putting me on a ventilator is just a short-term thing, and I just don't want to do that anymore." And then I flash forward to her last days, and thankfully my colleague had said, "Hey, she's really in a place where I think we're getting close." And I went to her home, and she's in her bed, her hospital bed, in her bed, sat in pajamas, um, and just laying there kind of unconscious. And I was able to give her a hug goodbye and say, "It's okay for you to go." She was holding on for all those family members that were still there. And the importance of being able to tell your loved one that it's okay, that everyone's going to be okay, is so true. And I can go back to personal experiences in my own life where I've seen similar things occur. And maybe there's some people out there that have felt the similar kind of thing. But that's an example of why I have such a passion and belief for hospice. Now, on the other side of the coin, there's situations that are not ideal, that are not that beautiful of an ending. And all you can do as a clinician is just do your best and realize that these people that are dying, their family members, their caregivers, they're all going through something that they probably have not gone through before, especially the patient, obviously, right? But even the family members, they might not have experienced the death of somebody that close to them. And that can cause a large degree of frustration and lashing out and feelings coming from the caregiver or the patient that have nothing to do with the caregiver there, i.e., the nurse, the aide, whomever. But as a problem in general, it's hard for that nurse not to take that personally. I can understand it in my logical mind, but you know that that personal side or limbic side saying, "Damn, what did I do?" And it really has nothing to do with you or anything in particular. It's just a sign of expression because of where they're at the moment. What's really interesting is to kind of bring this all kind of home is having that dialogue with my friend who I've known since I was a teenager, and that's over some 30 odd years ago. And when we were working at a Sears loading dock, putting obscenely what you would just lift with ease now, a 25 or 30-inch TV, which then was probably 300, 400 pounds and whatever, into these small little cars that couldn't hold them, to today, and as both grown in age, I don't know, I can't say from an emotion perspective. I like to think we're there, but we're still boys at heart, and fathers of daughters, and having lost people in our lives, and he was able to kind of share an example of how he lost a grandparent not too long ago and how it was a beautiful experience for them. But then him just kind of like coming at it from a different perspective, which really made me realize that how many of us out there haven't had that, haven't had to deal with that, and we're just not equipped to deal with that. So my hope is to really just kind of get out there, educate, and dialogue with interesting people, not just about death and dying, but just about topics in general. And this is really more of a exercise for me to communicate to whoever wants to listen, um, about things that aren't mainstream, aren't pop culture, per se, but are just interesting things that I find interesting as a human being, and what I hope to um, learn from this is just again just different perspectives from other folks in anything in any facet of life. And I'll share it like lastly, like one of the things I really gained when I was able to travel to so many different places was the capacity to, holy shit, that's a totally different perspective that I'd never thought of because I've just always been very tunnel vision and my way's the right way and I'm just going to steamroll you into to it even if I know that's the right way, which goes back to another buzzword that's out there today about emotional intelligence, and people talking about that. But it really comes down to, doesn't matter what industry you're in, so much of what we do day to day is communication with other people and how we deliver information, how they receive information, and not really understanding or appreciating where they may be or may not be at that point or what they're dealing with or not dealing with. And it's really kind of a mind fuck when you think about it and look at it from that perspective of everything that goes on in this world, and every human being is so unique in their own thing, and there's no same person out there, even a twin, right? They all have their own things about them. It's really just trying to meet people where they're at and identify what those things that are important to them. And so I hope to really explore that topic more and really be able to identify that in further discussions with interesting people about whatever. And hopefully, it won't always be this kind of heavy, but I still think it's a very important thing when you think about this time of year and knowing people in my life who's have family members that are on the decline and at this season that could really kind of dampen their spirit. Totally appreciate that. So I just ask, if you're out there, man, just try to smile. Ask somebody how their day's going, whether it's a clerk at the gas station, somebody at the grocery store, your local bartender, whoever, man. Just, hey, thank you. How are you? A thank you goes a long way in this world, and a genuine one at that. Um, I just feel like we can all do better jobs of being better people, and myself included. I'm a fuck up 4 ways to Friday, and I'll admit that all day long. Didn't get to this place overnight, but I feel it's very important to kind of share thoughts and things like that, and um, see what else is out there, what other perspectives are out there, because I'm always interested to learn more. So this is the first one. We'll see where it goes. Hell, we'll see if anybody's even interested in it, and that's okay if they're not, because this is just fun as fuck to do for me. But I just hope it opens up dialogue and causes people to think, if you will. So, thanks.